بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وصلى الله وسلم على رسول الله سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه وبعد. We have concluded fiqh of siyam and fiqh of fasting. It was not that hard, it's easy. But we have now moved on to a more difficult topic, which is fiqh of zakah. And we're kind of going backwards. Normally when you study fiqh, you study the 5 pillars first. After the shahada, the second pillar is salah, then is zakah, and then is siyam, and then is hajj. So normally when you study fiqh, you study salah first, and whatever comes before salah, tahara. And whatever comes before tahara, water. So every fiqh book starts with water, what type of water to use for purification. Then it talks about purification, then it talks about wudu, then it talks about salah, then it talks about zakah, then it talks about siyam. For our purposes, we started backwards. We skipped hajj. We started with fasting because we started the month of Ramadan. Then we're going to zakah because most people give their zakah in the month of Ramadan. And then we're going to salah because the assumption is that people generally know when it comes to salah what are the pillars of salah and conditions and nullifiers and whatnot. But many people have lots of questions about fasting and zakah. So accordingly, we did siyam first. Now we're doing zakah, and then we're going to do as-salah. Within salah, we'll do tahara and stuff like that. And then we'll get to the end, potentially, of fiqh sessions. The fiqh of zakah is very complicated. It will take a very long time if I'm going to go through details of it, which I'm going to try and avoid as much as possible, inshallah. We don't have to go to details for these sessions. The idea is so you know the general opinion. We're not here to give you a whole research paper on every topic, right? Let's start with the zakah. The first thing about zakah is the word zakah itself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses in the Quran in multiple places. وَمَا يُدْرِيكَ لَعَلَّهُ يَزَّكَّى. Use the word zakah. When we think about zakah, we think about the money that you give upon the wealth that you have, right? That's what we think about. But in this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ تَزَكَّى وَمَا يُدْرِيكَ لَعَلَّهُ يَزَّكَّى. What do you know? Maybe he's going to be purified. The one who purifies himself is successful. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used the word zakah for the meaning of purification. See, so zakah means a few things. It means at-tahara, which is purification. It also means barakah, which is blessing. It also means nama, which is increasing, surplus, right? It means a few things. Yes. So zakah means a few things: purification, blessing, and surplus, and increasing. And the word zakah, before I get to the meanings, let's go to the meanings. It purifies, zakah purifies. Bismillah. Hadi, watch him a little bit. He's going to drop the water. Bismillah. Just be careful, yeah. Purification, zakah purifies society. Zakah purifies society. Because Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said when it comes to zakah, zakah is given from the rich people to the poor people, from a Muslim to a Muslim, and it encourages and mandates and obligates circulation of wealth where no one is hoarding wealth in the community, and the money is being given from the rich to the poor, and it purifies the society from that perspective, where it increases the circulation of wealth and it increases the financial development in society. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told Mu'adh ibn Jabal one time when he was going to Yemen, what are you going to tell people when you go there? What are you going to teach people? Rasulullah told him, start with as-salah. Teach them about as-salah. And then teach them about az-zakah. When it comes to teaching about zakah, Rasulullah said, فَأَعْلِمْهُمْ about zakah, teach them, أَنَّ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى اِفْتَرَضَ عَلَيْهِمْ صَدَقَةً. Allah made obligatory upon them charity. This sadaqah here is talking about zakah. And what about that zakah? تُؤْخَذُ مِنْ أَغْنِيَائِهِمْ وَتُرَدُّ إِلَى فُقَرَائِهِمْ. It's taken from the rich people, it's given to the poor people. That's the purpose of zakah. Rasulullah ﷺ also said, إن الله فرض على أغنياء المسلمين في أموالهم بقدر الذي يسع فقراءهم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took the money, mandated money on the rich people, gave it to the poor people, called zakah. That's the purpose of zakah. So, purification. The meaning of zakah is purification. It purifies society of hoarding of wealth, enables circulation of wealth. Brothers in the prayer hall, Shadman, brothers, can I request everyone to be silent? It's very disrespectful of you to just ignore what's happening and continue with what you're doing. We're talking about zakah. The first thing about zakah, it purifies. The second thing about zakah, it increases. Zakah increases the wealth of the person who is giving. About purification, as I forgot to mention, it purifies your wealth. It purifies your wealth from the sins you've accommodated in your earnings. When you earned it, you never know where you slipped, where you fell. Zakah also purifies the heart of the person you are giving it to, the poor person. The poor person might have envy because of what the rich people might have, etc., etc. Purifies that. There is vices that poverty comes with. Rasulullah ﷺ used to seek refuge from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from faqr, from poverty. Ya Allah, don't make me poor. He would make dua. He says, Ya Allah, give me enough where I don't have to beg my hands in front of other people. And he used to seek refuge from al-faqr. Allahumma inna na'udhu bika al-faqr. Why? Because poverty comes with vices, with evils of itself. And zakah purifies the poor of this vice, of the vices of poverty. So, as you can see, zakah purifies the society. Zakah purifies the one who is giving from the evils of the heart, from the jealousy, from the miserliness, from the bukhl. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says one of the qualities about munafiqeen is they hold back from giving. Allah wal munafiquna wal munafiqatu ba'duhum من بعض يأمرون بالمنكر وينهاهم عن المعروف ويقبضون أيديهم. They hold back. Make sense? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala purifies the one who's giving. The one who is receiving it is purified of the vices of poverty. And the society is purified. Zakah purifies. Make sense? The second meaning of zakah is the surplus. It's one way to look at it, it's taken from the surplus that you have. You don't have to give on your personal belongings. It's taken from the savings that you have. Make sense? So that's one way. And that also means barakah. It puts more barakah in your money. So that's when it comes to zakah. The word that's used with zakah synonymously is also sadaqah in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions 8 categories who you can give zakah to in the Quran. The ayah says, إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ. The zakah that you give to these 8 people, but the word for zakah used is sadaqah. Makes sense? Now, some people say that the word sadaqah means optional charity, and the word zakah is mandatory charity. People say that, and it makes sense from a people's standpoint, but from a Sharia standpoint, that's not true. From a Sharia perspective, the terminology of the Sharia, they're synonymous. And Imam Mawardi, he says, they're interchangeable. Makes sense? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, خُذْ مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ صَدَقَةً تُطَهِّرُهُمْ وَتُزَكِّيهِمْ بِهَا. Take from them sadaqah. In this ayah, إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ. Sadaqah is for these 8 categories. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says zakah and sadaqah interchangeably. In the Sharia, these words are interchangeable, but for popular usage, people use it as sadaqah, as like a general charity. It's fine to use it, but they're similar in nature. Now, you see, the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the word sadaqah to describe giving, zakah, sadaqah, Shari'i wise are the same. Why is the word sadaqah? We talked about zakah, purification, barakah, surplus. Let's talk about sadaqah. Why is the word sadaqah used? The word sadaqah is used, it comes from sadaq. It comes from truthfulness. Rasul said, as-sadaqatu burhan. Giving charity is a proof. Proof of what? It's a clear proof. Proof is stronger than evidence. The word proof is stronger than the word evidence. is burhan, is proof of your iman. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mapped these two concepts, iman and giving, in the Quran in multiple locations. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also mapped stinginess from giving and nifaq, hypocrisy, in multiple locations in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, فَأَمَّا مَنْ أَعْطَى وَاتَّقَى وَصَدَّقَ بِالْحُسْنَى. The one who gives. فَأَمَّا مَنْ أَعْطَى وَاتَّقَى. The one who gives, he's a person of Jannah. In contrast, in the same surah, وَأَمَّا مَنْ بَخِلَ وَاسْتَغْنَى. The one who holds back, he's person of Jahannam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala contrasted people of Jannah, people of Jahannam. The action He contrasted them with is giving and not giving. That's why the word sadaqah is called sadaqah, because it comes from sidq. It testifies to your iman in your heart. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, الَّذِينَ يَبْخَلُونَ وَيَأْمُرُونَ النَّاسَ بِالْبُخْلِ. Those who are stingy and command people towards stinginess. You're not giving, and then you tell other people not to give also. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says for them is Jahannam. The Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about the munafiqeen, وَلَا يُنْفِقُونَ إِلَّا وَهُمْ كَارِهُونَ. They don't give except for with hesitancy. They don't really want to give it. This is the attitude of a munafiq. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mapping sadaqah and iman and bukhl and nifaq. Charity and iman and stinginess and hypocrisy. Make sense? That's why sadaqah and zakah are interchangeable. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says in the Quran, it's just another point, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا يُنْفِقُونَ أَمْوَالَهُم. Okay, Shaykh, hold on a second. What are you talking about? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا يُنْفِقُونَ أَمْوَالَهُم لِيَصُدُّوا عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. Those who disbelieve, they spend money in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So stinginess is hypocrisy, and disbelievers, like, what are you talking about? Well, they spend money for their cause. لِيَصُدُّوا عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ, to stop the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And believers spend money for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A munafiq, it's easy for him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تُعْجِبْكَ أَمْوَالُهُمْ وَأَوْلَادُهُمْ. Do not be amazed at the hypocrite's ability to speak, the ability to give, and the amount of money he has, because they're hoarding wealth and they're not spending in the path of Allah, they're spending on themselves. Makes sense? And a kafir is spending against the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But a believer, it's not just the one who spends. Okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says a believer spends. Yallah, let's go to the mall and spend all my money. Does that make you a believer? Spending in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is burhan, is a proof where your heart lies. As they say, if you want to know where a person's heart is, check his pocket. Where his pocket is going, that's where his heart is. Where is your pocket invested? Where is most of your money spent? Where is it going? What are you buying? What are you purchasing? That's where your heart is. If you believe it's somewhere else, you'll be waking up on the day of judgment, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will show you, and you can't lie on the day of judgment, where your heart is. As-sadaqatu burhan. Charity is proof. That is when it comes to the definition of sadaqah and zakah. When it comes to when zakah was revealed as a hukum at the time of Medina. In Medina, zakah was revealed, where all the ahkam shar'iyyah were being revealed. In the stage of Mecca of Rasul sallallahu, mostly the ayat and Islam had to do with two things, two categories, aqidah and tazkiyah. Some ulama have said aqidah and al-qasas, aqidah and stories of the prophets, because most of the Quran is stories of the prophets. But qasas and tazkiyah are related. The stories of the prophets purify. The stories of the prophets motivate and inspire and cleanse the heart and fix you up, right? So they're not really that disconnected. But and I believe that tazkiyah is a stronger opinion. Aqidah and tazkiyah was in Mecca. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is building their aqidah and cleaning their heart. And in Medina, sharia was revealed. And that's three things: aqidah, tazkiyah, sharia, which is what Hadith Jibreel talks about. Hadith Jibreel, Rasul sallallahu when he was asked the question, what is Islam, what is Iman, what is Ihsan? Islam is the fiqh and the sharia. Iman is the aqidah. the ihsan is tasawwuf. And the real tasawwuf, not the fake tasawwuf. There's two types of tasawwuf. One is goofy Sufi, one is the real Sufi, right? The real tasawwuf, that's ihsan. And that's tazkiyah. So aqidah was in Mecca, tazkiyah was in Mecca, and sharia came down. That's why Rasul said, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ is 1/3 of Islam if you read it. Why? Because that's what are the three? Aqidah, tazkiyah, and sharia. And aqidah, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ from A to Z, gives you the A to Z of the aqidah of Islam. That's why it's 1/3 of the message of the Quran. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us understanding. Now, when it comes to zakah, how much time we have? 2 minutes? Oh, okay. We'll cover the people who the zakah is fard upon tomorrow, and from whom amongst them exist today. Some of them don't exist today. For example, one of the zakah categories is slaves, freeing slaves. That doesn't exist today, right? There's 8 categories mentioned in the Quran. إنما الصدقات الفقراء فقير مساكين عاملين عليها, the administrative cost for zakah. مؤلفة قلوبهم, you want to make their hearts soft towards Islam. وفي الرقاب والغارمين وفي سبيل الله وابن السبيل, the people who are traveling, the prisoner, the slave, freeing the slave, etc., etc. We're going to the detail tomorrow, and we'll also talk about the nisab. Who the zakah is fard upon, we'll talk about that today, so it's a quick thing. Zakah is fard upon essentially a Muslim who is an adult and he is bulugh al-aql, like his mental maturity and physical maturity is there, and he's a Muslim and he reaches the nisab. What is that nisab? We'll talk about tomorrow, bidnillahi ta'ala azza wa jal, and we'll talk about the categories tomorrow. Wa jazakumullahu khairan. Let's make dua. We have 1 more minute. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. اللهم لك الحمد كما ينبغي لجلالك ولعظيم سلطانك. اللهم اغفر لنا وكفر عنا واعف عنا يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من عذاب القبر ومن عذاب النار. اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من فتنة المحيا والممات ونعوذ بك من فتنة المسيح الدجال. اللهم أعتق رقابنا ورقاب آبائنا وأمهاتنا وأزواجنا وذرياتنا من النار. اللهم انصر إخواننا المظلومين في فلسطين وفي السودان وفي كل مكان. اللهم عذب المنافقين والصهاينة الذين يصدون عن سبيلك. اللهم أحصهم عددا وقتلهم بددا ولا تغادر منهم أحدا. اللهم ارحم موتانا وموتى المسلمين واشف مرضانا ومرضى المسلمين. وصل اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا